Imagine doing something every single day that quietly shrinks parts of your brain, weakens your memory, and raises your risk of dementia faster than aging itself. Most seniors believe this habit is harmless, even necessary. Doctors once encouraged it, but today, neuroscience is telling a very different story once you hear it. You may never look at this everyday habit the same way again. As we grow older, one of our biggest fears is losing our memory, our independence, and our sense of self. Dementia doesn't arrive overnight. It builds slowly, silently, over years. Tiny changes in the brain add up until names, faces, and familiar routines begin to fade. What's shocking is that one of the strongest triggers isn't a rare disease, bad genetics, or even what you eat. It's an everyday habit millions of seniors practice without a second thought. This habit feels restful. It feels safe. It feels like something your body needs more of as you age. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. To understand why, we need to talk about how the aging brain actually stays healthy. For decades, scientists believed the brain was fixed after adulthood. Once brain cells died, they were gone forever. But modern research proved that idea wrong. Even in your 60s, 70s, and beyond, your brain can form new connections, strengthen memory circuits, and protect itself from degeneration. This ability is called neuroplasticity, and it's one of your greatest defenses against dementia. But here's the catch. Neuroplasticity only happens when the brain is gently challenged, when it's engaged, when blood flow, oxygen, and sensory input are flowing regularly. When that stimulation disappears, the brain doesn't rest, it weakens. And this is where the everyday habit comes in. Many seniors are unknowingly spending too much time doing nothing, extended sitting, long periods of inactivity, hours spent seated in front of a television, recliner, or phone, not moving, not engaging, not challenging the brain or the body. At first, it sounds harmless. After all, resting feels good, especially if your joints ache or your energy isn't what it used to be. Sitting feels safe. But science now shows that prolonged sedentary behavior is one of the fastest ways to reduce blood flow to the brain. Your brain, despite being only about 2% of your body weight, uses roughly 20% of your body's oxygen and energy. It depends on steady circulation. When you sit for long stretches, especially without breaks, blood flow slows. Less oxygen reaches key memory centers like the hippocampus. Over time, those areas can literally begin to shrink. Multiple large studies have found that seniors who sit for many hours a day have smaller brain volumes than those who move regularly, even if they exercise occasionally. This means that going for a short walk in the morning does not fully cancel out 10 hours of sitting. And here's the most unsettling part. You can meet traditional exercise guidelines and still be at higher risk of cognitive decline if the rest of your day is spent sitting. Researchers call this active couch potato syndrome. You might do your walk, your stretches, or even light workouts, but then spend the remainder of the day seated. The brain doesn't just care about exercise, it cares about movement frequency. Every time you stand up, shift positions, or take a few steps, you send a signal to your brain that says, stay alert, stay connected, stay alive. Without those signals, the brain slowly downshifts. In brain scans, scientists see reduced connectivity between regions responsible for memory, attention, and decision-making in people with highly sedentary lifestyles. These changes closely resemble early patterns seen in dementia. What makes this habit especially dangerous for seniors is how quickly it becomes routine. Retirement often removes daily structure. Social interaction may decrease. Television fills the silence. Chairs become comfort zones. Days blur together with fewer reasons to get up and move. But the brain interprets that stillness as decline. Another hidden danger of excessive sitting is insulin resistance. When muscles stay inactive, the body struggles to manage blood sugar efficiently. Elevated blood sugar and insulin resistance have been strongly linked to cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease. Some researchers even refer to Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes because of how closely it is tied to impaired glucose metabolism in the brain. Sitting too much also increases chronic inflammation. Low-grade inflammation damages blood vessels, including the tiny ones that feed your brain. Over time, this can contribute to vascular dementia, one of the most common forms of cognitive decline in older adults. And let's not forget posture. Slouched sitting compresses the chest and restricts breathing. Shallow breathing means less oxygen. Less oxygen means less fuel for brain cells that are already vulnerable with age. What is heartbreaking is that many seniors are told to take it easy as they age. Rest more, sit more, slow down. While rest is important, too much inactivity sends the wrong message to your nervous system. The brain thrives on gentle challenge, not constant comfort. Think about older adults you've met who seem sharp well into their 80s or 90s. Often they're not marathon runners. They're movers. They stand up often. They garden. They walk while talking on the phone. They tidy small things. They shift positions. They stay engaged with their environment. They don't sit still for hours. Even watching television becomes safer when paired with movement. Standing during commercials, light stretching, marching in place. These small actions create repeated bursts of blood flow that nourish the brain. One landmark study followed thousands of older adults over several years and found that those who reduced sitting time even without increasing formal exercise had significantly better cognitive outcomes. Memory declined more slowly. Attention stayed sharper. Risk of dementia dropped. The message is powerful and hopeful. Your brain does not need extreme workouts. It needs consistency. It needs motion woven into your day. What makes prolonged sitting the fastest trigger is that it's silent. You don't feel pain. You don't feel damage. You don't notice anything wrong until memory slips start happening. And by then, the habit has been reinforced for years. But the brain responds surprisingly quickly when the pattern changes. Within weeks of breaking up sitting time, studies show improved blood flow to the brain, better insulin sensitivity, reduced inflammation, improved mood, better sleep, and sharper mental clarity. This is not about fear. It's about awareness. If you're over 60, the question isn't, do I exercise? It's how often do I move throughout the day? Because the habit that feels like rest may actually be teaching your brain to shut down, little by little, day after day, without you realizing it. Especially when combined with another very common daily behavior that most seniors rely on to relax, which research now shows may quietly amplify the damage even further. That second behavior is mental passivity. Not just sitting, but sitting while your brain is barely engaged. When the body is still and the mind is passive at the same time, the brain receives almost no meaningful stimulation. This combination is far more harmful than either one alone. And for many seniors, it happens every evening without fail. Television is the most common example. Watching shows for long, uninterrupted hours requires very little active thinking. The scenes change, the dialogue flows, and your brain becomes a passive observer. There's no problem solving, no memory effort, no decision making. Over time, the brain adapts to this low-demand state. Neuroscientists call this use-dependent decline. The circuits you use often grow stronger, the ones you neglect weaken. When the brain spends hours each day in a passive mode, the networks responsible for attention, recall, and executive function gradually lose strength. This doesn't mean television is forbidden. The danger comes from how it's used. Long stretches, minimal movement, no interaction, no challenge. Brain imaging studies show that seniors who engage mostly in passive leisure activities experience faster cognitive decline than those who balance passive activities with active ones like reading, learning, social interaction, or light physical tasks. Even listening to music while moving has a very different effect on the brain than sitting motionless and watching a screen. Another issue is time distortion. Passive activities make hours disappear. You may plan to sit for just a bit, but suddenly it's been 3 or 4 hours. During that time, blood flow remains low, posture collapses, breathing becomes shallow, and the brain stays understimulated. This creates a feedback loop. The more passive the brain becomes, the harder it feels to engage in active behaviors. Motivation drops, mental fatigue increases, and sitting feels even more appealing. Over months and years, this pattern can quietly accelerate memory problems. There's also a powerful emotional component. Long periods of passive sitting are associated with higher rates of loneliness and depression, both of which are independent risk factors for dementia. When social interaction decreases, the brain loses one of its most important forms of stimulation. Conversation forces memory recall, emotional processing, and quick thinking. Without it, cognitive skills dull faster. Even when seniors live with family, passive habits can isolate the brain. Watching alone, sitting quietly, minimal back and forth communication. The brain craves interaction the same way muscles crave movement. Now here's something most people don't realize. The brain doesn't measure stimulation by intensity. It measures it by frequency. You don't need crossword puzzles for hours. You don't need complicated learning. What the brain loves most is frequent, small challenges. Standing up and naming 5 items in the room. Walking to the window and observing something new. Asking a question, telling a short story. These micro-engagements keep neural circuits active. In fact, studies show that breaking sedentary time every 30 to 60 minutes with even 1 to 3 minutes of light movement and mental engagement can significantly reduce cognitive decline risk. This means dementia prevention is less about adding more and more activities and more about interrupting harmful patterns. One simple habit shift can protect the brain more than an intense routine done once a day. Another overlooked factor is sensory deprivation. When sitting passively for long periods, especially indoors, the brain receives fewer sensory inputs, less variation in light, less sound diversity, less tactile feedback. The brain thrives on novelty. Without it, neural responsiveness dulls. That's why something as simple as stepping outside for a minute, feeling fresh air, noticing temperature changes, or hearing birds can have a powerful effect on mental clarity. For seniors, these small sensory experiences act like brain vitamins. Now let's talk about fear, because fear often keeps seniors trapped in sedentary habits. Fear of falling, fear of pain, fear of overexertion. These fears are understandable, but complete avoidance of movement actually increases fall risk over time by weakening muscles and slowing reflexes. Ironically, sitting too much can make movement more dangerous later. The solution is not intense exercise. Safe, frequent, gentle movement paired with mental engagement. Standing while folding laundry, walking during phone calls, light stretching while watching TV, asking questions about what you're watching instead of just absorbing it. The brain doesn't distinguish between exercise time and life. It only knows how often it's being activated. What's encouraging is how quickly seniors notice changes once they break this cycle. Many report improved focus within days, better mood within a week, sharper recall within a month. These improvements happen because blood flow increases, oxygen delivery improves, and neural circuits wake up. Dementia does not begin with forgetting everything. It begins with subtle slowing, difficulty finding words, losing track of thoughts, reduced curiosity. These are early warning signs that the brain is understimulated, and the most common reason is not disease, it's habit. The everyday habit of prolonged sitting combined with passive mental consumption trains the brain to do less, expect less, and function at a lower level. But here's the empowering truth. The same brain that adapts to decline can adapt to protection. It doesn't care how old you are, it cares what you do today. By changing how often you move and how actively you engage, you send a powerful signal to your brain that it is still needed, still challenged, still alive. In the next part, I explain how to break this habit safely and naturally using simple daily changes that take no extra time. No gym and no special equipment, and why these small shifts may be one of the strongest defenses against dementia after 60. The key to breaking this habit is not willpower, it's design. You don't fight your day. You reshape it so your brain and body are gently nudged into motion without effort. The first shift is to stop thinking in terms of long activity sessions and start thinking in interruptions. Your goal is not to work out. Your goal is to interrupt stillness. Research shows that standing up at least once every 30 to 45 minutes dramatically improves circulation to the brain. Even better if you add light movement. This can be as simple as standing and walking to another room, rolling your shoulders, or gently marching in place for 30 seconds. These micro-movements send fresh blood, oxygen, and glucose to the brain. One powerful trick many neurologists recommend is something called movement anchoring. You attach movement to habits you already have. For example, every time you get a phone call, you stand up. Every time a commercial break starts, you stretch. Every time you finish a glass of water, you walk a few steps. The brain loves patterns, and when movement becomes automatic, protection happens without effort. Another important change is posture variation. Sitting itself is not the enemy. Staying in the same position is. Shifting from sitting to standing, from standing to leaning, from indoor to outdoor environments, creates constant sensory feedback for the brain. This variety keeps neural circuits responsive. Cognitive engagement matters just as much. Passive time becomes protective time when you add interaction. Instead of watching silently, talk about what you see. Predict what will happen next. Recall a memory connected to the scene. Ask questions. Even speaking out loud activates language centers, memory networks, and emotional processing areas of the brain. Social microinteractions are especially powerful. Short conversation, a greeting, a shared laugh. These moments stimulate more brain regions simultaneously than almost any puzzle or game. They force real-time thinking, emotional awareness, and memory recall. If you live alone, this is still possible. Phone calls, voice messages, even speaking your thoughts aloud while doing tasks can activate similar pathways. The brain responds to expression, not just listening. Another overlooked brain protector is light exposure. Sitting indoors for long periods under dim lighting disrupts circadian rhythms, which directly affect memory and brain repair processes. Getting natural light earlier in the day, even for a few minutes, improves sleep quality at night. In quality sleep is when the brain clears waste proteins linked to dementia. Sleep itself is deeply connected to sedentary habits. Too much daytime sitting often leads to poor nighttime sleep. Poor sleep then worsens memory, attention, and emotional regulation. It becomes a cycle. Breaking up sitting during the day improves sleep, which then protects the brain further. There is also something called anticipatory movement. This is when the brain knows movement is coming soon. Even planning to stand up or move creates subtle neurological activation. Setting a gentle timer or reminder to stand doesn't just prompt movement, it prepares the brain for action. Nutrition plays a supporting role here. Movement improves how the brain uses nutrients. Without movement, even a healthy diet cannot fully protect cognitive function. Blood flow is what delivers nourishment to brain cells. Stillness starves them. What surprises many seniors is how small these changes are compared to their impact. You are not reversing years overnight. You are changing the signal you send to your nervous system every day, and the nervous system listens closely. Within 2 to 4 weeks of reducing prolonged sitting, studies show measurable improvements in executive function, processing speed, and working memory in older adults. These are the exact areas that decline early in dementia. This is why prolonged inactivity is considered one of the fastest triggers. It's not dramatic, it's not painful, it's not obvious, it's quiet and consistent, and the brain adapts to whatever it experiences most. But adaptation works both ways. When the brain experiences regular movement, engagement, novelty, and interaction, it strengthens protective networks, becomes more resilient, it delays decline. In the next and final part, I'll explain why doctors rarely talk about this habit openly, how to recognize early warning signs that your brain is understimulated, and the simple mindset shift that helps seniors protect their memory long-term without fear or overwhelm. Many people wonder why this information isn't talked about more openly in doctors' offices. The truth is, medicine is often designed to treat disease once it appears, not to focus on everyday habits that quietly shape the brain years before symptoms show up. Sitting feels normal. Passive relaxation feels earned. And because the damage happens slowly, it rarely triggers urgent concern until memory problems are already noticeable. Another reason is that seniors are often given well-meaning advice that unintentionally reinforces the problem. Rest more, take it easy. Don't overdo it. While these suggestions aim to prevent injury, they sometimes push people toward excessive stillness. What the brain actually needs is not strain, but stimulation. Doctors who specialize in brain health are increasingly clear about this. They see that the earliest changes linked to dementia often appear in people who have slowly withdrawn from movement, engagement, and interaction. Not because they are lazy, not because they are weak, but because life gradually became more sedentary and predictable. There are early warning signs that the brain may be understimulated long before dementia develops. It's feeling mentally dull most days, losing interest in things you once enjoyed, struggling to concentrate during conversations, forgetting words more often than usual, feeling unusually tired after long periods of sitting. These signs are often dismissed as just aging, but they are frequently signals that the brain is not being challenged enough. The encouraging news is that these signs are often reversible. When seniors reintroduce regular movement and engagement, the brain responds with surprising speed. Curiosity returns, focus improves, mood lifts, confidence grows. These changes are not psychological tricks. They are biological responses to improved blood flow, oxygen delivery, and neural activation. One of the most powerful mindset shifts is this: your brain does not retire when you do. It remains responsive. It remains adaptable. It remains capable of growth. But it takes cues from your daily behavior. If your days send the message that stillness and passivity are the norm, the brain downshifts. If your days send the message that movement and engagement are part of life, the brain stays alert. This is not about doing more. It's about doing things differently, standing more often than sitting, engaging instead of consuming, moving gently but frequently, letting your environment change, letting your brain stay curious. The habit that accelerates dementia risk is not a single choice. It's a pattern repeated quietly over time. And the pattern that protects the brain is just as quiet, just as simple, and far more powerful than most people realize. Every time you stand up, you're not just moving your body, you're feeding your brain. Every time you engage instead of zoning out, you're strengthening memory pathways. Every small interruption of stillness is a signal of life. Aging is inevitable. Cognitive decline does not have to be. By becoming aware of this everyday habit and gently changing it, seniors can give their brains something priceless: ongoing reason to stay sharp, connected, and alive. Before we end, I want you to remember this one simple truth. Dementia does not usually begin with a dramatic event. It begins with silence, with stillness. With days that look comfortable on the outside but quietly ask very little of the brain. The most dangerous habit is not something you do once in a while. It's what you repeat every day without thinking. Long hours of sitting, long stretches of passive time, comfort without stimulation, rest without movement. And yet this is also why the solution is so powerful. You don't need to fear your future. You don't need extreme routines, expensive programs, or complicated plans. You need awareness. You need gentle, frequent reminders to move, to engage, to stay connected to the world around you. Stand up more often than you sit down. Move your body in small ways throughout the day. Speak, interact, observe, and stay curious. Let your brain know it is still needed. Because the brain you use is the brain you keep. No matter your age, today can be the day you begin sending a different message to your mind. It's a message that says, stay awake, stay active, stay with me. That single change repeated daily may be one of the strongest protections your brain will ever have.